Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Revolution.
First, what is a revolution?
Revolution is the solution, hey.
The motive of a revolution.
Well, now,
The objective of a revolution.
we televise.
And the result of a revolution. And the methods used in a revolution.
I know you know. Put my gun away. Never gonna put my gun away. Put my gun away. See the mob, you better run away.
This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
Hello, Internet. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody is having a fantastic evening. We have a special episode for you tonight. This is an important topic for me, and I'm very thankful that I have a chance to talk to the guests that we're about to talk to. On June 8th of 1967, the USS Liberty, a naval surveillance ship, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong about the type of ship, was attacked during the Six-Day War out in the Mediterranean Sea. They were in international waters, and they were attacked by our greatest ally. Now, the fact that they were attacked by Israel isn't a controversy. Everybody knows that happened, even though the sailors were, in large part, told to shut up about it after the event for decades. The controversial part is, was it on purpose? Did Israel attack the ship on purpose? And I've come to believe that they did. And I believe a lot of the sailors on that ship also believe that it was attacked on purpose. For what reason? That can only be speculated, but we're going to get into that tonight. So tonight, I have a very special guest, Larry Bowen, a survivor of the USS Liberty, and we're going to get into everything USS Liberty right now. Hey, Larry.
How you doing, Michael?
Great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. We got a lot to talk about. So, I mean, start off. Why don't you introduce yourself? How'd you get into the Navy, and then how did you end up on board the USS Liberty?
I entered the Navy March 31st, 1965. Earlier in March, I had received my draft notice. I was 18 years old, and no, actually, I was 19 years old, I guess then. And I went to the Navy recruiter to see if I could get in the Navy, and he said, well, go take the Army physical, and we'll put you in the Navy. And so I went, took the physical, came back, I had passed the physical, and the Navy said, well, when do you want to go in? And I said, well, how much time do I have? And he says, I think the sooner the better. So I went in March and went to Great Lakes Naval Training Center in Chicago, Illinois, for 11 weeks of basic training.
And for those that are unfamiliar with the timeline, this is smack dab in the middle of the Vietnam War, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And that's part of the reason that I went in the Navy. I figured if I went in the Army, I'd be immediately sent over to Vietnam.
Right.
That wasn't something that I was looking forward to. So I thought the Navy might be a better choice. So at boot camp, they have a selection process. You take a battery of tests, and then based on your scores, they try to pigeonhole you into certain career fields. I wanted to be a radioman, and because I was working for Sylvania Electric before I got drafted, and I wanted to be able to repair equipment and have a skill when I came out of the Navy. Initially, I was only planning on spending 4 years in the Navy. So during the selection process, I told whoever the petty officer was that was screening us, that I wanted to be a radioman. And he says, well, your scores are pretty high. Why don't you go down and talk to these people at the end of the hall? And I said, are they radiomen? He said, oh yeah, they have radiomen, but it's classified work. And so I went down, and the next thing I knew, I was being, slotted for a communications technician radioman billet, which after boot camp meant that I was going to go to Pensacola, Florida for 6 months to learn the international Morse code, which I did. And I was down there for 6 months, became accustomed to, Navy policies and procedures, and did pretty well at the training center. And when I graduated, I managed to get my first choice of duty, which was Bremerhaven, Germany. So I went over to Bremerhaven, Germany late in 1965. And while I was there, I was honing my skills as a manual Morse operator. I think it was in Bremerhaven, maybe 4 to 6 months at the most. I thought I was going to be there for a 2-year tour. But once I showed my proficiency at copying Morse code, I got orders to the USS Liberty. So my first cruise on the Liberty was in 1966. And did I say that I was there in 60? I went to Bremerhaven in 65, late 65.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my first cruise on the Liberty, we typical ship deployment went to the west coast of Africa. And because we were off the west coast of Africa, we were copying, again, Morse code. And my initial cruise, we went across the equator. So I got initiated into the shellback realm. As a polywog, you have to go through kind of a hazing ritual. And
I hear it was a pretty harsh hazing from Phil.
Looking back on it, yeah, it was. But I survived, as did everyone else that was going through at that time. And then we had 2 more cruises, uneventful. But then in, I guess it was May of 1967, we got orders to go, on another cruise off the west coast of Africa. At that time, we were scheduled to go into Abidjan on the Ivory Coast. And we stopped there on, it was either the 22nd or the 23rd of May. And that night, the 23rd, we got orders from the Pentagon to immediately go to Rota, Spain. They didn't tell everybody where we were going. Of course, being a CT, we found out pretty quickly that we were going to Rota, Spain, and then we were going into the Med.
And so the audience understands there was 2 different crews on the Liberty, essentially, right? You had the CTs, the communications technicians, and then the Navy guys that were more like that took care of the ship, right?
Yeah, I mean, their job was to keep the ship running and do general maintenance and keep things smooth. There were 200 of us CTs and about less than 100 of ship's company. And
this was essentially, I mean, for lack of a better term, essentially a spy ship, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what makes this ship different is that you guys went out on cruises solo. You didn't have any other ships accompanying you, correct?
No, because, we were intercepting communications, and having other ships around would have just, made it that much more difficult for us if there were other comms in the area. So we always traveled alone. But when we got orders into the Med, we got to Rota, Spain to take on some supplies and some additional personnel. We picked up 3 Marines, a civilian, actually 2 civilians. One was a CIA person, the other one was an NSA person.
Right.
NSA being the National Security Agency for your listeners. And at that time, the general service people didn't have a clue what was going on. Again, we CTs had the word that we were going to the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm sorry, the Western Mediterranean. And so we took on our supplies, and early the next morning, we got underway for the Sinai Peninsula. I think we got on station over there on the 7th.
Were you aware that the 6-Day War was going on at that time?
Absolutely, yeah. And the skipper had told us that we were going into a war zone. He had requested from the 6th Fleet an escort, a destroyer escort, because
Right.
the only armament we had on the USS Liberty was 450 caliber machine guns. So, I mean, that was more for repelling boarders. It wasn't for, shooting aircraft out of the sky or, taking on torpedo boats. But the 6th Fleet refused to give us an escort.
Is that uncommon? Was that abnormal to you?
They should have provided an escort. I mean, knowing that we were going into a war zone, common sense would tell you, yeah, let's provide some support for them. But the 6th Fleet leadership said, no, you've got a very distinct silhouette, with all the antennas and everything. You're going to be flying the American flag. You don't have to worry about it. So, and even our officer in charge of the Naval Security Group on board, Lieutenant Commander David Lewis, had requested, support, and again, it was denied.
But
So,
the ship, you say it had a very recognizable silhouette, and there was no other ship like this in the Navy at the time, right? With the 3 giant antenna arrays
and the Treshcom on the rear. There was the Treshcom was a new platform that allowed us to bounce signals off the moon and send back direct to the Pentagon and the National Security Agency. So, we were probably the most sophisticated intelligence collection ship on the seas at that time. There were 5 ships like us, including us. There were 4 others, and but they all had specific areas that they, went on their cruises, and ours were always off the west coast of Africa. Anyway, we got on station on the 7th, and we were about 13 miles off the coast, in the international waters. That first day, I think we may have been overflown a few times. I was internal to the ship, so I didn't get to see the aircraft coming over. On the second day, June 8th, they started overflying us early in the morning. It was a beautiful day, sun shining, calm seas, a light breeze, and I know that we were overflown probably a half a dozen times on the 8th before the attack.
Do you know how low approximately they were?
I don't, because I wasn't topside. I had a day watch that day. I was setting a position down in Radio Research 1, which was in our secure spaces. General Ship's Company didn't have access to that area. But I knew how many times, because the captain would call for Tom Raleigh. He was the CT, but he was also the ship's photographer. And he was called to the bridge on numerous occasions to get photographs of I'm told there was flying boxcars and low flying aircraft. But like I said, I didn't see him because I had a day watch. I was setting a position.
But the planes were identified, like who was.
Oh yeah, they clearly had the Star David. They were flying low enough that guys on the main deck were actually able to wave to the pilots and get waves back. So for those of us that still felt that Israel was an ally, we felt pretty comfortable. We didn't think that we were in any danger because our ally was overflying us. They knew exactly who we were, exactly where we were. Most of us didn't feel we had anything to worry about.
So, I mean, if you guys could identify the Star of David on the wings of the plane and you could wave to the pilot, it's pretty safe to say that even if they didn't notice the big GTR-5 stamped on the side of the ship, they didn't even notice the giant antenna rays and the truss comm on the back of the ship, that they definitely saw the American flag waving.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people that try to debunk this story say that, oh, it was because it wasn't a windy day, so the flag was, down. But I mean, what are your thoughts there?
No, it was. I think the wind was 6 or 7 knots. I mean, it wasn't
Blowing,
blowing real hard, but the flag did stand out from the mast, so it wasn't like it was limp against the mast. And again, that's from other crew members who were topside and actually saw it. I heard it, after the fact, but I had no reason to believe that anybody would lie about that. We always flew the American flag. So anyway, we had several overflights on the 8th, and around 12 or 12:30, the skipper called, a general quarters drill.
Which is, can you explain what it is?
All right. All of us had at least 2 assignments. Our primary assignment, which was, like I said, I was on a day watch. But secondarily, when they call for a general quarters, I would move from my day watch position up one deck to the next level and move into a new room, still setting at a receiver, still copying code. And we tried to have one of every branch in that room. Clyde Way was a T brancher, and he sat right next to me in the room when he went to his general quarters station. So part of me still suffers from what I call survivor guilt. Where I was sitting on the day watch was against a bulkhead that led, the other side of the bulkhead was our comm center. And that's where all the O branches were. And so I'll get to that part later, but I mean, that's where I was sitting until the general quarters. And then I went up one level. So we're up
Now,
there. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick, before the general quarters, I heard you tell Jocko that one of your buddies had intercepted a transmission from Israel talking about something big was about to happen.
No, that was me.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I was setting a position, and about, I don't know, 9:30 or so, 9:30, 10 o'clock, I rolled across a signal that I didn't recognize. And I started copying it because that was my mission. And my buddy, Bob Eisenberg, was working. He's a linguist, was a linguist, and he worked in the processing and reporting center. So as I was copying this stuff, someone from the processing and reporting center, after a few transmissions went over to him, came over and stood behind me so that every time I finished copying a message, he would pull it off my typewriter and take it over to the processing and reporting people so that they could analyze it and send messages back to NSA and the Pentagon. I didn't know how important it was until Bob and I went to chow at about 11:30. And Bob told me that what I was copying was very important, that they were planning an attack. He didn't tell me I was copying Israelis, although he was a Hebrew linguist and a Russian linguist. He just said that it was, they talked about a target, didn't identify the target, but all of the communications related to this target that they were going to attack. In hindsight, I think it was probably, Israeli comms. Anyway, he told me.
And so you think it was Israeli comms, and you believe that the Liberty was the target they were talking about?
Yeah, I do. And so we went to chow. We didn't talk about it anymore because we weren't in our comm spaces. And I went back to doing the same thing when we got back from chow until I went to general quarters, the practice general quarters. And it was a, chemical warfare kind of scenario where guys would have to dress up in, outfits and pretend that they were, fighting this chemical weapon, whatever it was. Lasted about an hour, and then we secured from that. And this was probably 1:30 in the afternoon. And everybody went back to doing what they had been doing before. I went back and set my position next to this bulkhead that I was talking about, until I heard a loud racket coming from, sounded like the main deck. And to me, it sounded like someone dragging an anchor chain or something across the deck. It was actually 50 caliber machine gun fire that was, ricocheting off the deck. And immediately the skipper came on the internal comms and said, General quarters, this is not a drill. And he was a lot more emphatic than I just was. But anyway, he sounded the alarm. That's when I moved up one level. And someone took my position on that bulkhead. The aircraft probably attacked for about, I'm going to say 25 minutes. Hard to say, because it seemed like every minute was an hour. When you're inside, you didn't know what was going on outside, except that there were a lot of, explosions. I could actually see the tracer bullets coming through the skin of the ship, into the area that I was sitting
And at this time, neither you nor anybody topside knew who was attacking you, correct?
No, the attacking aircraft were all blackened aircraft. They had no nationality markings on them at all. Again, I didn't know that because I was internal to the ship, but the guys that were topside knew that. In fact, you said earlier that you had talked with Phil. Phil Turney was there. He actually saw them. And let's see, Mickey LeMay, who was topside, was actually strafed by those aircraft. He was pretty seriously wounded, but he didn't see any markings on him either. So, and I've talked with both Phil and Mickey, so I know that they were telling the truth. So the aircraft attacked for about 25 minutes, and internally, you know, you're nervous. You don't know exactly what's going on, and you know, after the aircraft finished with their 50 caliber riddling of the ship and their rockets, they actually put rocket holes in every one of our watertight doors, so that, you know, the intent was once the attack was over, we would sink. After the initial aircraft attack, another set of aircraft came out with napalm, and they dropped napalm on the superstructure up by the bridge and that whole, you know, section of the ship.
So two questions there. Were those planes also unmarked? And
Yes, they were unmarked.
And so what would the purpose of the napalm be?
Well, it's a gel-like consistency. It's it burns very, very hot, and it's more a personnel type.
Weapon.
Yeah. It's just to eliminate any personnel that were still actively moving, you know, in the superstructure area. It's next to impossible to extinguish, and most of our fire hoses were riddled by 50 caliber shots. So I know Phil tried to put it out with CO2 extinguishers to no avail. So it set the whole superstructure into a fiery inferno. And, you know, you would have thought that was the end of it, except that then the torpedo boats showed up on the horizon, headed in our direction. I'm not sure how long it was after the air attacks that the torpedo boats actually got close enough to launch torpedoes. I'm going to say it was probably a half hour, maybe not quite that long,
But the torpedo boats were marked, right?
yes, yeah, they had the Star David flag, and there were 3 of them. They approached from the starboard side.
Oh, sorry. To backtrack really quick, weren't the first things that were taken out not only the watertight doors, but didn't they also go after the communications antennas?
Oh, absolutely. They took out the transmitting antennas and the 450 caliber machine gun mounts on the first pass. I mean,
Now, the one they didn't take out was also, that was the only one that wasn't transmitting, correct?
that's correct. They were using heat sinking missiles, and the those that were transmitting, you know, were hot.
Right.
So the one that was offline was taken off because we were having problems with it, And so there was
Thank God.
no heat being generated by that antenna until Terry Halbardier ran a coax cable to the antenna
So
and
this is
jury rigged it.
this is my favorite part of the story. Like, so the thing I told you before we went live was that we have in common. I'm a sound and communications technician. That's by trade. That's what I do.
Okay.
So for me, somebody while getting attacked, going and laying down a spool of coax, climbing a tower and plugging it in, that is just I mean, that movie could be made about that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's just such a awesome part of the story. Like, what a hero he was.
Yeah, he was a third class electronics technician at the time, and we were still being attacked. I mean, I don't know if the torpedo boats had struck yet or not. I don't know that they hadn't, because this was still during the aircraft attack. When he realized that he just took it upon himself to get out there. He was wounded while he was doing the splicing, and but he survived, and he managed to get it up, and the radioman got our distress call out.
And that was picked up by the Maddox. No, not the Maddox. Sorry, by the Saratoga, correct?
By the Saratoga. Saratoga being an aircraft carrier, they got the word, and they immediately launched aircraft to come to our aid.
So do they launch aircraft prior to the torpedo boat showing up, or like right around that same time?
No, it was before.
Okay.
And they sent a message back saying that help was on the way. So everybody in the Radio Shack felt pretty comfortable that we were going to get support from the Sixth Fleet. I guess as soon as the White House heard about that, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara came on and said, return those aircraft to base. And I guess Captain Tully on the Saratoga felt that maybe Washington thought that they were still nuclear warheads on the aircraft, because the Sixth Fleet had been conducting a nuclear warfare type rehearsal during the day, and so Tully made sure that his aircraft were reconfigured to conventional arms, and after they returned, and both the Saratoga and the USS America, another aircraft carrier, launched aircraft to come to our aid.
What would their intercept time have been?
15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So they were. We heard from one of the pilots that they were just about at the horizon when they got another call from McNamara saying, I told you to return those planes to base. And Admiral Geis from the Sixth Fleet got on the phone and said he wanted it from higher authority. Johnson got on the line and said, I don't care if the ship and everyone on board goes to the bottom of the Mediterranean. I'm not going to embarrass an ally. Now, all of us.
Who did you hear that from? Like, that he said that?
I heard it from Dave Lewis, our officer in charge of the security group, but I didn't hear it until I don't remember how many years afterwards. He had been seriously wounded during the attack, and when he got offloaded to the ship, he went to the America, and for medical treatment. And the admiral called him to the admiral's quarters and said that he wanted to tell him something, but he didn't want Dave Lewis to say anything about it until after the Admiral's death. So the Admiral told Dave what I just told you, that Johnson got on the phone and had said those words.
That's insane. That's just insane.
It is. It's actually an act of treason,
Right.
because we were still under attack, and the aircraft could have prevented the torpedo boats from getting to us.
Right. And this is Lyndon B. Johnson that said it.
Lyndon B. Johnson,
the person that took over after JFK was assassinated. But okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So anyway, the aircraft were recalled, and we didn't get any kind of Sixth Fleet support until 17 hours later, the next day. After I didn't talk about the torpedo attack yet.
Right.
But the aircraft were on the deck. Nobody was coming to our aid. And the torpedo boats came up alongside. They were firing, I guess, 40 millimeter cannons at us, and 50 caliber machine guns. They were shooting at anyone who might still be out on the main decks.
And at this point, had you guys, because they shot down the flag in the first run, correct? And then somebody strung up holiday colors, which is what, a 7x14 size flag?
Something like that. Yeah,
it's a big ass flag.
Oh yeah, it's the holiday colors. It takes two guys to raise it and bring it down.
So that flag was flying when the torpedo boats were shooting.
Yeah. Now it's possible that the bridge was still aflame from the napalm. I don't know. I mean, we weren't able to put out the fires, so it just had to burn itself out. And I think that was part of the word that the Israelis said. Well, they couldn't see the flag because of the smoke. Again, I was in topside, so I couldn't, swear to that. But other crew members were topside, and Larry Weaver, who was our fantail phone talker, told us a number of times that he could see the flag. So he was on deck. He was on the main deck on the fantail, and he could see the holiday colors. And this was before the torpedo attack. So what I didn't say was that, again, after the fact, there were other intercepts by other collection platforms over in the Western Mediterranean. We talked with a couple of Air Force personnel. We talked with guys from Cyprus and guys that were on EC-131s. They had voice intercept, and the voice intercept was between the pilots and the ground controller. That voice intercept was damning. It basically told us that it was a deliberate attack. The pilots, before they launched anything towards us, when they were coming out for their initial attack, had commented to the ground controller, we see the target. It's an American ship. We can see the flag. And the ground controller told them to attack the target. Now, one of the pilots refused. He apparently went back to base and was disciplined for it. But we found out, again, long after the fact, after the cover-up had already been in effect for probably years.
Now there's audio recording of one of the pilots.
Yes.
And it's in the Al Jazeera documentary, but I mean it's actual audio recording, and you hear the pilot say Amerikai because he was speaking in Hebrew, and you can very clearly say essentially, hey, these are American ships.
Yeah.
Or this is an American ship. And that's, I mean, to me, the evidence is overwhelming that there's.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So torpedo boats arrive. There's been audio interceptions from other military sources, not just American military sources, saying that they have clearly identified the ship as American. They continued the attack. They launched torpedo boats that started firing with, what did you say, 40 cal machine guns?
40 millimeter
40
cannons.
millimeter cannons.
And,
okay.
Yeah. And 50 caliber machine guns.
Okay.
But when they got in close enough for torpedo launching, the skipper came over the internal comms and said, prepare for a torpedo attack. Most of us were, I'd only been in the Navy for 2 years, had never experienced any kind of general quarters where you'd have to prepare for a torpedo attack, had really no idea, what you could do. Clyde and I got to a bulkhead, sat ourselves on the floor on the deck, and waited for the impact. Torpedo boats launched 5 torpedoes. Fortunately, the skipper was able to maneuver out of the way of 4 of them, but the 5th one struck us on the starboard side, opened up a 20 by 40 foot hole in the starboard side. That torpedo, when it hit an I-beam, and the torpedo exploded immediately. It was deafening. And it wiped out the entire comm center. I'd mentioned earlier, I had been sitting next to the bulkhead that led to the comm center when I was on my day watch. So I would have been sitting in a position there had I not had a different general quarters station. Clyde and I got blown from the deck to the overhead, back down. When we came back down, most of the equipment in the racks had been blown out of the racks. And, we were dazed, I guess, for a while, just not knowing, what was going on. We immediately lost power, and the ship started listing at about 9 degrees. Clyde and I got out of that room and went out to the hatch that led down into the flooded compartments. Clyde and I, Lieutenant Johnson, and Lieutenant Bennett, Lieutenant J.G. Johnson, were there at the hatch, helping survivors get out of the scuttle, which is a little hole in the top of the hatch. It wasn't good for a mass evacuation. So
one at a time.
Yeah. It was just big enough for one person at a time. So we undogged the hatch and lifted the hatch so that there was more room. You're still only getting, one sailor at a time up the ladder that had almost been blown away. But fortunately for those guys down below, the ladder was still, secure at the top, been blown apart down at the bottom, but it was easy for them to, get on the ladder and walk up to the deck above. After we got the hatch open, I was sent to the main door leading into our comm spaces to hand out life jackets to to the survivors that were coming up. I did that until the last survivor came out. And then I went back to the hatch to help, bring out anybody else that might still be in there. Lieutenant Bennett made an emotional plea, yelling into the area, saying, if anyone is still alive, pound on a pipe, just let us know you're there, and we'll come in and get you. We didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, and so we had to dog down the hatch.
Because the water levels were rising, and if you would have left that door open,
it
would have.
was probably, 6 inches from the top.
But for all you know, at the time, there could still be guys alive in there. And then once you seal that hatch,
it's possible.
But I mean, that had to have been something that was going through your mind at the time, right?
Well, yeah, when we were right there, we didn't know, and that's why Lieutenant Bennett made the plea. And when we didn't get any response, then we just had to dog it down. And I heard after the fact that later some ships, general ships company, actually came in there doing kind of a damage assessment. And, we weren't in there any longer. Most of the information or documents and the equipment that we were using was damaged in some fashion. So I don't think the CTs were too concerned about it at the time. We all went to, I went up to the chief's area, chief's mess, which was a collection station for, injured personnel. And I tried to help the corpsmen with some of the injured. Ernie Gallo and I actually performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on our postal clerk, John Spicer. John had been outside fighting a fire and got hit by a rocket on the left side, just ripped him to shreds. And he was brought into that, casualty collection area. And so we were trying to keep him alive with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And the third class corpsman that was there, we only had one doctor, Dr. Kiefer, who was a lieutenant. We had a first class corpsman and a third class corpsman. So it's, when you have 34 killed and 174 wounded, they were busy, and anybody that could help tried to help. So the corpsman came in, saw what we were doing, says, I need to do a tracheotomy. And he did. And for me, I needed some fresh air. I mean, everything had been, pretty much bottled up from the start of the attack. The air was stale, smoke, and I needed to get outside and get some fresh air, or I was going to be a casualty. So I got permission to go right outside the main hatch and sat next to a winch so that I was out of line of fire for any attacking aircraft or the torpedo boats. And while I was out there, a first class petty officer, Jeff Carpenter, came by. He said, Bowen, go back on the fantail and be phone talker. I mentioned earlier, Larry Weaver was our phone talker back there. I found out afterwards that he had been severely injured and had been taken down to the mess decks, which was another casualty collection. It was our triage area. That's primarily where all the seriously wounded were put on tables in the mess decks. We put mattresses down and then put the severely wounded on the mattresses. But I'm up on the fantail. I put on the headphones and I was talking with the bridge. Told them that who I was and that I was the new phone talker. And at that time, I could actually see the torpedo boats back on the horizon. So they weren't firing on us at that point. They were back directly behind the ship, but they were I don't know, just lingering there.
Waiting to see if you sunk.
Yeah, probably. And I'm not sure how long I had been back on the fantail before I saw the wakes of those 3 torpedo boats, which indicated to me that they were headed back in our direction. So I relayed that to the bridge. Skipper came on and told us to, prepare for second torpedo attack. I knew, based on the initial attack, that if we got hit by another torpedo, we would have all died. We would have gone to the bottom of the Med. But I stayed back on my position and just relayed to the bridge, what was going on. The closer they came, then I saw an aircraft coming from the starboard side. Initially, I didn't identify it as a helicopter, which is what it ended up being, because it was too far away. I just saw it, and then as it got closer, I, confirmed that it was a helicopter. And it came up alongside, and I think that was a helicopter that might have dropped the burlap bag on the deck with an orange or a couple of oranges in it to weight it down, and had a note inside, basically asking if we had any casualties and could they assist us. The skipper basically told them to go to hell. We were still afloat, and he didn't want their help.
Was that helicopter marked?
I didn't see any markings on it, but I'm pretty sure it was an Israeli helicopter, because the torpedo boats were definitely Israeli, and so I'm pretty sure it was,
They were there at the same time, so
yeah. And shortly after they left, I don't know if the torpedo boats hung around for a while, because when they first came up, I mentioned that they were using 50 caliber machine guns and 40 millimeter rockets. They shot up all our life rafts. We had sent 3 life rafts over the side to help offload, seriously wounded, because the skipper said at one point, prepare to abandon ship. So the only 3 life rafts that were still available were lowered over the side. But the torpedo boats shot them up. They, which is a war crime.
Now I actually heard Daryl Cooper talk about it, who is it's Jocko's co-host for one of his shows. And he said that they actually had one of the life rafts on display in a museum in Israel. Is that correct?
Yeah, I heard that too. They actually picked up one of the life rafts that was in the water and took it on board one of the torpedo boats. I guess as a trophy. I don't know. It was clearly marked as, U.S. Navy. But that was pretty much the end of it for the attacking part. course, that night, I don't think any of us got any rest. We were down in the mess decks helping the doctor take care or triage the seriously wounded.
So, in between the time that the USS Saratoga launched aircraft for the second time, did you guys receive any sort of communication saying that they weren't coming, or were you just expecting them to show up at any moment?
We were just expecting them to show up at any moment. The last communication that we got from them was that help was on the way, but every time it got recalled, they didn't communicate to us that things have been delayed in any way. But after the fact, we actually talked with some of the pilots from the America, and they were absolutely disgusted that they got recalled when they could have come to our aid before the torpedo boats. And when the torpedo hit, it killed 25 of our crew members immediately from the explosion. The people in the comm center, the people in our maintenance shop, the people in our processing and reporting shop, and some of our linguists. It was devastating. The torpedo blew out that bulkhead that I'd been sitting on earlier in the morning, and I don't know, probably 40 crew members were in that area, and probably 15 of them didn't make it.
Okay. So the attack's over. You guys are still hoping someone shows up at any time. You've got, dozens of guys injured, getting triaged. The ship stopped listing, but it's still listing, but it stopped continuing to list.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are just hanging on with a hope and a prayer that ship isn't going to sink. And what happens throughout the night, and what was sort of the next course of events?
The night was long. Your adrenaline's still pumping because you're pretty sure you're out of the woods, but you didn't know if the ship was going to stay afloat.
Right.
There was this 20 by 40 foot hole in the starboard side. We had to shore up the bulkhead, frame 51, to prevent that from collapsing and sinking.
And that's the interior of the ship. It's not meant to hold back the force of the ocean and all that
Right.
water pressure. So it's
Right.
literally just sheet metal skin.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. Okay.
Yeah. They that held. Fortunately for us, it did. The next morning, 17 hours later, we saw the USS Davis and the USS Massey, our first two ships to arrive in our area, tied up alongside us, sent a repair crew over to help with the shoring, and I think they sent medical staff over also to help before the America and the Saratoga arrived with the rest of the Sixth Fleet. And then we thought we were going to go to a close port because the ship was in pretty serious shape. And instead, they said we were going to Malta, which was 1,000 miles away. So, we were just barely under our own power at that point. And I think it took 6 or 7 days for us to get to Malta.
Did you have an escort?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At that point, we had probably a good portion of the Sixth Fleet, close by. And the Massey and the Davis, both destroyers or destroyer escorts, were close enough that if anything were to happen, we could have, offloaded to both of those ships. When the Sixth Fleet arrived, they actually airlifted more seriously wounded crew members to the America. I think the Little Rock and also the Tully, over to the Saratoga, where they had the medical staff on board to help. But so we got to Malta, like I said, maybe a week after the attack. But prior to us getting to Malta, Admiral Kidd came on board the ship and took off his stars and sat down with groups of us and asking us to, tell him exactly what happened. And, we told him. And then he put his stars back on and said, all right, I'm an admiral again now. And if you ever say anything to anyone about what happened, we'll put you in prison, fine you, or both. And like I said, I'd only been in the Navy for 2 years, but when an admiral tells you to keep your mouth shut, you do. And of course, being a CT, all of our work was secret to begin with. So keeping the secret was just another secret, basically. And I didn't think too much of it at the time. I didn't realize that the cover-up was already beginning. And so for me, it was just keeping another secret. And as it turned out, I re-enlisted in the Navy in 1969 and ended up making the Navy a career. So I kept my mouth shut for 50 years.
And to put in perspective the gravity of the cover-up, I mean, this is a United States Navy ship that if it were attacked in this exact same way by one of our enemies, we would have went to war.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, so to put further perspective on this, the Vietnam War had already started, and that was based on the precedent that the Maddox was shot up by Vietnamese. And that was our excuse to put boots on the ground in Vietnam. And that turned out to be a massive lie.
Yep.
But then the USS Liberty is legitimately attacked, almost sunk. 34 men were killed. 170 people were injured. The ship barely stayed afloat. And it was essentially covered up, and people didn't even know the attack happened for decades. It wasn't like front page news. It was just buried. And again, Lyndon B. Johnson recalled the aircraft. It was, I mean, for me, I'm 100% convinced that this was a deliberate attack. So you can only draw one conclusion from that this was a planned attack, that they were going to use the sinking of the ship, killing every man on board, and use it as a precedent for something. And a lot of people speculate to draw the U.S. into the 6-Day War. The only counter argument to that is the 6-Day War was essentially over at that point. So, I mean, speculating on that it doesn't even really matter. It's with all this evidence, you can assume that this was a planned, deliberate attack to sink a United States ship, kill every man on board, to use as an excuse for something. Exactly what that is, we can only speculate about. But am I on track there?
Yeah, there's other evidence to show that Johnson wanted to nuke Egypt. He wanted to get rid of Nasser. And
with a nuke?
Yep. Yeah, they actually had the Strategic Air Command scramble at 4 o'clock in the morning before the attack. 4 o'clock in the morning, they were called into the ready room to get dressed for what was going to be an attack on Egypt. We heard that from the SAC airmen after the fact. So a lot of the information that confirms that it was a deliberate, unprovoked attack has come to light after the fact. Although, the comms between the pilots and the controller were intercepted that day. I mean, NSA had those comms. One of the linguists that copied some of those comms was stationed back at NSA in the late 1970s, and he actually saw the tapes. So they had them. Whether or not they still have them is anyone's guess, because we've asked through the Freedom of Information Act for anything related to the USS Liberty. FOIA requests to the National Security Agency, FOIA requests to the CIA. We've actually got a lawsuit in the courts out in Washington State. One of our supporters, Michelle Kanukin, and I put together a brief to go to the courts with a request for information that we know the NSA has, and everything up to this point, I'm talking this month, has resulted in the NSA submitting appeals to not release this information. The judge now has the latest information from both our side and the NSA side, and we're hoping to get a ruling maybe as early as this summer, and hopefully it'll be in our favor, where they would issue a ruling that the NSA has to release those documents. Again, being a CT, I know that anything that they release, if they still consider it classified, they'll redact a lot of that information, and you'll have to read between the lines, as far as what it really said. But it was apparently the one set of communications came from a congressional group that they were the authors of it, but they gave it to NSA saying that they couldn't release it because it wasn't theirs, it belonged to Congress, and that's bogus. So that's been their primary argument over the past couple of years. We'll see.
We need to get Thomas Massey to spearhead an effort like he did with the Epstein files.
Yeah.
So if irrefutable evidence or irrefutable proof came out that this was not only a deliberate attack, I mean, to me, the biggest story isn't even necessarily that it was a deliberate attack by Israel, but that we covered it up and it looks like helped plan it. So if proof came out that not only was it a deliberate attack, but we helped plan it, I mean, that would shake the entire intelligence community, the U.S.-Israel relationship to the core. And especially right now with, in addition to Epstein looking like he was a Israel asset, with us essentially going to war in Iran with Israel. I mean, this looks like not only does Israel have our government by the balls, but they've had our government by the balls for decades. Is that a fair assessment?
No, that's fair. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Operation Cyanide?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, the book that came out talked about a submarine and a ship in the Mediterranean, and the plan was to send. I thought it was a ship that was going to go down through the Suez, but I guess at some point that changed, and they were going to send the submarine. The book talks about how this submarine was shadowing us. I forget the how it was referred to in the book, but there was a government group, a committee called the 303 Committee in Washington that were advisors to LBJ, and that group had planned this transit, I guess, through the Suez, and we just happened to be over there at the right time, and could very well have been the sacrificial lamb to see whether or not that would draw any fire from Egypt, which would have brought the United States into the war as well. Just like when Israel attacked us with unmarked aircraft, the intent was to do as much damage as they could before the torpedo boats got there, and then sink us with the intent. It's kind of a false flag operation, because
Right.
we didn't know who was doing the attacking. It wasn't until the torpedo boats came up and we could see the Star Davids on them.
Right. But at that point, they had thought your communications had been completely taken out. So the idea is that they used unmarked ships or unmarked airplanes to do the initial attack, just in case you guys got a communication out before they could take down your communications. And then even if you did got a communication out, you couldn't identify who was attacking you.
No. So I don't know. It's what happened was that we didn't sink, and then they had to come up with a cover story.
Yeah,
and
oopsie daisies.
Yeah, I mean, Israel first said that they had us on their war board, as clearly marked as a USS Liberty. This was early in the morning on the 8th.
And what is a war board, if you could explain that?
It's in their war room. They have a large board that's typically on a table, and they had placed markers on this table, displaying any assets that were in the area.
Essentially a big map.
A big map, yep. And so we were there, I'm told, until 11 or 11:30 in the morning on the 8th, at which time there was a changing of the watch back in Israel, and we were removed from the board. They had probably stopped their surveillance at that time, but clearly we were there. We were only traveling at 5 knots, which was typically what we would do when we're operating. So it wasn't like we're moving out of the area, at a high rate of speed. But when the torpedo boats started pursuing us, they apparently said that they had sighted us and that we were traveling at 25 or 30 knots. I mean, it's ridiculous. The ship going flank speed with all the boats rattling, would have been maybe 18 knots. So their math was way off. But again, they felt, based on their analysis, that a ship that was traveling at 30 knots could be nothing other than a combat vessel.
Right.
Um,
Even though it was the most identifiable ship in the Navy, arguably.
yeah. That's
Now, our mutual friend here, John Dixon, wants me to ask you about the Thomas More report and the sworn affidavit of Ward Boston. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. The Admiral Thomas More has been a staunch supporter of the USS Liberty survivors. And he never believed that it was a mistaken identity. He actually got a committee of senior officers together. I think there were 5 of them, including the admiral. And they took on a separate investigation on their own. This is in the late 90s to early 2000. And the Moore Commission report actually identified, several areas that, would tell anyone reading the report that it was a deliberate attack. The report also asked that the Navy conduct a full impartial investigation with congressional oversight, because Congress wasn't going to do it because they were, already under Israel's thumb. But the Navy could have done it. And, that was one of their recommendations, to have a full and impartial investigation. That commissioner's report was actually read into the congressional record. I think it was in either 2003 or 2004, October of that year, when they were honoring Admiral Moore for his 40 plus years of naval service. And it's actually in the congressional record. But no one ever took any action on their recommendations. So I don't know. It's for us crew members, there's just so much evidence pointing to the deliberate attack. We feel that it's important for the American people to get the truth. And that's what we're trying to do when we're telling our story. At this point, I'm almost 80 years old. I probably wouldn't survive very long in prison if they decided they were going to do that to me. But we've got 34 crew members that didn't make it home, and we'd like to see recognition for those 34 crew members. There's never been any public recognition for them or the crew. It's just,
there was even Congressional Medals of Honor given out for this, right? But it wasn't.
The skipper got the Congressional Medal of Honor.
But wasn't it in secrecy, sort of?
Yeah. They, he was stationed in the Washington, D.C. area. And at that time, the Congressional Medal of Honor's recipients were all invited to the White House for the awarding of the honor. Not Captain McGonigal. He had his Medal of Honor presented to him over at the Navy Yard in D.C., wasn't announced. I mean, I live right here in Maryland. I could have easily made it to the ceremony had I known about it. But he was only given, I guess, a short list of people that he could possibly invite, and because they wanted to keep it low key, no press, nothing else.
But that's unheard of, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
Congressional
yeah,
Medal of Honor, isn't that one of the highest honors you can get?
it is. It's the highest honor that you can get, and he was snubbed. Um, and I mean that's been the norm for the entire crew ever since the incident. One of the things that I didn't mention earlier when we pulled into Malta, um, we survivors, CTs that were still, I was walking wounded. I was injured, um, but we survivors had to go back into the spaces where our 25 shipmates had been in a flooded compartment, and we had to recover the bodies. Um, I volunteered to go down on the first recovery team because I didn't know what happened to my buddy Bob Eisenberg. Uh, so I went down. First person that we recovered was one of the Marines, and then I don't remember who the second person was. I had a mission. I was looking for Bob, and I found him back in the um, linguist area. Uh, Recognized him right off, even though he was bloated, um, and we got him in a body bag and got him out of there. The first three people that we recovered were all pretty much intact. Um, they had died. Bob had died instantly. He had a shrapnel wound in his chest, about a 5 or 6 inch gash. Looked like he had died instantly. And I wanted to be able to tell his family, that he didn't suffer, that he died instantly. But the Navy wouldn't allow me to go with the body back to Minnesota because um, they have groups, I guess, detachments that would do something like that. I was still, active duty, so I I just took it as Navy policy not to allow it to happen. But it's bothered me because I never got to talk to his mom and dad or his sister, you know, about what happened. Uh, I think it was about 5 years ago. I actually was in touch with his nephew um, down in Florida and started, exchanging information with them. And um, I um, I went to one of our reunions and picked up some memorabilia that I was able to send down to him. I was able to tell them, that Bob didn't suffer, um, but his mom and dad had already passed. I mean, this was just, you know, a few years ago. So, but so it was probably the most gruesome thing that I have ever been involved in, going down there. And it took us probably close to 10 days, cleaning up those spaces, securing all the classified information, and getting the bodies and body parts um, together so that we could let the people in Malta actually come on board and start repairs. Um, and of course, right after that, right after we finished our cleanup, I got sent back to Norfolk, Virginia to get reassigned. I got 2 weeks to leave, and then they told them I wanted to go back to Germany to finish up my tour, which the Navy allowed. So so that worked out. But
It sounds like Bob was a pretty good buddy of yours, and you wanted to do right by him.
yeah, he and I would go up to New York, which is where I, enlisted and where I grew up. And on our weekends, when we both had the weekend off, we'd drive up to New York because, he lived in Minnesota. There's no way he was going to get back to Minnesota on a weekend pass. So he came up to my place in New York, and, we went out, saw some friends, and just had a good time. We were close. We were really close.
Look, I'm sorry to put you through reliving all of this. I imagine this is difficult to talk about, but it's important.
It's actually getting better, Michael. Initially I couldn't talk about it without breaking down, but it's therapeutic in a way, because I needed to get it off my chest. I'd been, it had been bottled up for over 50 years. I never said anything to anybody, my wife, my family, no one. And, I could always get by with, well, it's all classified, I can't talk about it. But after 2016, I think, is when I first started opening up a little bit. Another fellow crew member, Ron Kukul, was he was actually in charge of the body recovery teams, and it was his job to put body parts in the right bags so that families would get their sons back.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me that he couldn't remember anything. He didn't have any recollection of the smells or anything else coming from that area.
He blocked it up.
Yeah. I think he was told by a psychiatrist that it's normal for something when you're going through a traumatic event like that to just block it out. There are parts of what happened during or after the attack that I don't have any memory of. When I was back on the fantail, I don't remember how I got from the fantail back to the mess decks to help with the triage. I'm sure I went down there after the attack, but I don't know when I was relieved or what. It's just certain areas are blacked out.
So the sinister thing is that what's really weird about this is, even to this day, I imagine you're not on like Twitter or X or anything like that,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
So I am. It's like one of my things. And I've been on since like 2020. My account really started blowing up in like 2023. And at first it was just kind of get information and talk and stuff. And then you start noticing weird things. I'm sure you're familiar with like Operation Mockingbird.
No, I'm not.
So Operation Mockingbird was basically the CIA putting CIA assets in newsrooms, and they would basically cascade out the message that they wanted sent out. There's tons of books and documentaries on Operation Mockingbird, but I don't think it ever ended. And I, in fact, think that it moved online. And this particular issue, the USS Liberty, and specifically whether or not it was a deliberate attack, is like alarm bells start going off somewhere. And the amount of inorganic attacks that you get when you talk about this, and I'm not talking about you, I'm saying anyone that talks about this, they get denounced as anti-Semites. They get called conspiracy theorists, and I mean, the level of inorganicness behind it is just it's strange. It's very strange. And I'm sure you've experienced this, not online, but I mean, just with the whole cover up of this, I mean, it's very clear that people in very high positions of power do not want this story getting out. And that's why I think it's so important that the work that you guys are doing and the conversations that you guys are having. And, fortunately, Phil has gotten on some pretty big shows. I wish my show was bigger and more people would see this, but, there's hopefully somebody that has a much bigger show than mine will see your interview and invite you on their show to talk about this, because I get the truth out there for Bob and all of the other people that didn't make it, and
yeah, that's what we're trying to do. The crew is to continue to tell our story, get the truth out to the American people, and hopefully, maybe mass media will, come around and say, let's get you on as a panel discussion or something. Phil did the Candace Owens interview, and that got a lot of views. So she's got a big audience, and that helped to get the message out. And like I do interviews or podcasts whenever I'm asked, and I've got a couple more podcasts this week, and also I've got a presentation that I'm doing to a group up in Pennsylvania in April, and I'm going to continue to do it. We owe it to the 34 crew members that we lost. We owe it to the rest of the crew. I mean, all of us have been subjected to, being abandoned by our government, being told to never talk about it, which, has made it that much harder for us, because you internalize all this. You just keep it all bottled up inside, and a lot of our crew members still won't talk about it. So, Phil's our current president for the Liberty Veterans Association. I'm a past president of the association. I'll be running again here in June for a 3-year term. And that's our mission. Get the word out. We've written to the president. We've written to other presidents, and get no response. I mean, they just ignore us. And like you said, I don't know. It's just, it bothers me that our government, after almost 60 years, wouldn't own up to the truth.
well, they can't.
Apparently they can't. Yeah.
There's too much riding on this. The implications behind it are, it's too much. This is one of those things, and this is like if it came out that 9/11 was I can't even say the words, but or if they came out that there was undeniable truth that they took out JFK. Just all of these things together show that the government is not there for the citizens. They're not there for the military. They are there to build an empire. And this helps suggest, this is one of the things that suggests that we are an occupied nation. If a foreign country has this amount of power over us to get us to go to war for them, and this is the same country that we're talking about that attacked the USS Liberty, Then, I mean, what does that imply? What are the implications behind that?
Well, I mean, I spent 21 years in the Naval Security Group, but I worked all 21 years for the National Security Agency. John Pollard, I don't know if you remember him, but he worked at the
Oh,
agency.
yeah.
And he was, infiltrated the National Security Agency, selling classified information back to, or probably didn't sell it, probably just gave it back to
Right.
his country. But he was caught, and part of the negotiations after he'd been imprisoned was, to get him released, and that happened.
And he received a hero's welcome when he
Oh,
got back to
Yep.
Israeli
I'm
soil.
sure. I'm sure. But after I got out of the Navy in 1986, I went to work as a defense contractor for another 22 years, supporting the National Security Agency. And all the while, I was hoping to get access to the top secret report that NSA had, thinking that, well, they told the truth. They had to tell the truth. Wasn't the case. Their whole report centered around the communications, which is what the Navy Court of Inquiry that was conducted on a hurried basis did. They only were concerned about the fact that we were supposed to have gotten a message telling us to move 100 nautical miles off the coast.
Yes, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, we never received that message. Whether that was by design, I don't know. But
Could that have been the reason that they took the ship off the warboard?
it's possible. I don't know. I think, and again, it's speculation on my part, that when they had their shift change, they felt that we had ample time to move out of the area, and Israel had already given, Washington notice that if we didn't, move off the area, that they were going to take action against us, and that was the day before the attack. So,
But they still try to say, I mean, isn't that a legitimate reason? Couldn't they say, like, yeah, we told you guys to get out of there, you didn't, so we had to? I mean, they could own up to it by that. At least then there's, I mean, it's not a good reason, but at least then there's a reason behind it, you know?
Well, their reason was that they said that they thought we were an Egyptian ship.
Right.
And
It's like a third of the size. It looks nothing like it.
Yeah, no. I mean, it wasn't a warship. It was a horse carrier. So it was, I mean, there was no similarities at all between the two ships.
I've looked at them. I've looked at them both side by side.
That was part of their, rationale for attacking us. And earlier in their reasoning, they said that the shore had been bombarded from the sea. Well, I mean, that wasn't us. I mean,
yeah, with your 450 cals.
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing there to support that, which is why they changed the story. They changed the story a couple of times early on, before they finally came up with something that I guess they told Washington to accept. And I guess that was the fog of war, mistaken identity. We didn't see the flag, and so.
John wants me to ask you about the sworn affidavit of Ward Boston. He said he was the author of the report, and he was ordered to cover it up.
He was part of the group that did the court of inquiry, and I don't know if he worked with Admiral Kidd or one other admiral on the board. I don't remember which, but he was taking notes They, he and the admiral both reviewed the transcripts from the court of inquiry and disagreed with their findings. They, the mistaken identity part, and Admiral Boston, when he did his sworn affidavit, um, laid it out pretty clearly that the information that was available, made it clear that it was a deliberate attack. I probably have that somewhere in my notes, but I haven't looked at it in a while. So,
If you were to play devil's advocate and try to steel man the best argument for it being a mistaken identity, try to take the other position and give them the benefit of the doubt, what would you say the best logical reason behind it would it be?
Knowing what I know, I don't know that I could give a legitimate argument for, it being a mistaken identity, because I know about the overflights. I know about the voice comms between the pilot and the ground controller. I know about the information that I copied as a Morse collection operator. I know in talking with Bob how important it was, and that it was, talking about a target. So if I wanted to try and convince people that it was mistaken identity, the fog of war would be the only thing, that you could come up with as a plausible reason. But then the aircraft pilots recognized it as an American ship. They saw the flag and they talked with their ground controller because they didn't want to attack an American ship, and they were told to attack anyway. There's just no way. I mean, and you were talking about the comms that were in the Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera documentary. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, that's their comms. They had it and they reported it. But again, it was long after the fact. But our government has never, rescinded on the belief that it was still a mistaken identity. I don't understand. We the crew need to have some closure with all this. We're not going to go down without a fight, and that's all
very clear.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to get the word out, and we'll continue to do that for as long as we're drawing breath. But
well, I'll help you guys shout it from the rooftops the best I can. So my buddy Eric is in the chat here. He's a good buddy of mine. He's actually Jewish. He has family in Israel. He's gone very deep down. He's studied this event, for lack of a better term, extensively. He's read books on it. He agrees that there's no possible way that this was a case of mistaken identity. He's 100% convinced that this was intentional. And I mean, this is my buddy. We disagree vehemently on a lot of things, but we are 100% in line on this one. He says the Lyndon B. Johnson quote can be found in Dead in the Water. That's the book by Robert McNamara.
Yep. Joan Mellon wrote the Dead. I think it was Dead in the Water. She had a lot of good information in that. The book that I would recommend is Remember the Liberty by Philip Nelson. Philip's no longer with us, but I've read most of the books that are out regarding the Liberty, and his book is probably one of the best that I've read. Jim Ennis wrote the first one back in 1980, and that opened it up for guys like Phil Turney and some of the others to write.
I love Phil.
Yeah,
He's
I mean, he was topside. He saw all this stuff as it was happening, and he's written about it. So that's one thing about the different survivors. We were all in a different area of the ship, but we all agree on just about everything as far as the attack goes. There was never any doubt. So you're going to hear, when you hear a panel of us talking. The last one that we did was Phil, Mo Schaefer, and myself.
Jocko, right?
Yeah. Well, no, with Jocko, it was Phil, Joe Metters, and
right.
myself.
Right.
Joe is our historian, and he's got a lot of information about everything that was ever published. But and that was a good interview. I mean, that and the Sacrificing Liberty 4-part docuseries.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yep. That was I don't remember how many of us were down there for the filming of that. Probably a half a dozen of us, and True News did an excellent job with that. They that's really a great docuseries.
There was somebody in that documentary that I asked John about that I really wanted to talk to, but I guess he's passed already. Was kind of a thinner guy. I believe he had glasses, bald, but I think he was an NSA guy, actually. I could be mistaken.
No, the only NSA guy that we had on the ship was Blue. I don't remember his first name, but it was Mr. Blue, and he died during the attack.
Okay, I think so. John just put in Cadre David Lewis is who I'm talking about, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would have loved to talk to him as well.
Oh, yeah. It's a story that needs to be told, and some of us are willing to do that, and we'll continue to do it.
It's like the story gets suppressed because, I mean, I have a buddy that I work with who was in the Navy and he'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
And it's just everybody I talk to has never heard of it. And to me, this is like, you've never heard of JFK, or you've never heard of 9/11, or you've never heard of Pearl Harbor. It's up there with those. To me, it's that important, and it's just buried and suppressed. And I have a feeling this interview will get heavily, bogged down by the algorithm. It's like they don't want this story getting out.
Oh, I appreciate the fact that you're, opening up the airways for us, and hopefully, you'll get some listeners that will ask their representatives to, what's the story behind the USS Liberty? Why didn't you investigate it? Or why don't you investigate it now? Well, some of us are still alive. I don't think there's going to be any kind of punitive action for anyone over in Israel, as a result of the attack. I mean, the pilots may still be alive. The crew members on the torpedo boats may still be alive. I mean, they were probably our age or maybe a little older. But, guys like Johnson and McNamara and the people here in the United States are all gone.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think punitive action is even what is most important at this point. I mean,
But it's
if we
true.
if we send, I mean, it's not for sure going to happen, but I have a very bad feeling that we are going to not only put boots on the ground in Iran. I mean, we're already sending 5,000 troops over there to sort of secure the area or whatever their assignment is. But if they decide to do a ground invasion of Iran, I mean, you're talking about 500,000 troops. You're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of men and women being killed in action because we're going to war for another nation that did this to you guys. And that's the sort of thing that this discussion needs to prevent, because it's not like this is just a series of events that show that we are not in control of our own, at the very least, foreign policy. And the more people that are aware of these types of things, the more people that notice what's going on, maybe public outrage will keep other men and women from dying. Like that's what I hope to prevent.
Yeah, I was going to say we can only hope. I mean, that's part of the reason that we're doing what we're doing, so it doesn't happen again. We still send our military to foreign soils to fight wars that we probably have no business in being in. And I can't justify what's going on over in Iran. I mean,
Nope,
I
no one can.
know that part of the rationale is to prevent the development of nuclear weapons. But
supposedly supposedly that was taken care of during the 12-day war, but apparently then it wasn't. And then it became about protecting the protesters. And then no, that wasn't really it. And then it became about regime change. And then, well, if that's going to happen, you are going to need to do a ground invasion. And we're going to send in the Kurds. Oh, wait, no, the Kurds aren't willing to do that. It's just the messaging around this is so non-existent. Like, what is the objective? It's not clear at all. Hegseth can't say what his objective is. It's just the whole thing is a cluster. And
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I mean, is there anything that we missed? Anything else that you want to bring up?
Well, like I said, I hope that your listeners get upset enough that they will contact their representatives to urge them to do a full and impartial investigation into the attack on the Liberty that occurred 59 years ago. But the truth has never been told to the American public. And it just needs to be done. I've written to my local representatives. I've written to the president. We actually got an invite to go to Washington when George Bush Sr. Was in the White House, and we thought we were going to meet with the president, and we got snubbed. We got John Sununu, who was, I guess, his chief of staff at the time, came out and talked to us in the Rose Garden, and then offered us a tour of the White House. But nothing happened. And the skipper was there with his Medal of Honor, and all of us had waited all day for this, only to be snubbed again. So
crazy. The former head of the CIA snubbed you guys. How ironic.
Oh yeah, yep. So we, it happens all the time, and we're used to it. we don't like it, but fortunately for us, people like yourself and Candace Owens and Jocko will give us a shot. And like I said, I'm willing to do presentations and talk to groups or do interviews, podcasts, whatever, to continue to try and get the truth out and hopefully get some recognition for our 34 fallen shipmates that never got any kind of public recognition. Nothing.
Well, I'm going to reach out to everyone that I know that has a bigger platform than I do, and hopefully we can get you on with, I'd like to get you on with Scott Horton and Daryl Cooper. I think that'd be a great discussion for you to have. Okay. Well, where can people find you? Where can people donate to the cause? I know you got the Liberty Veterans Association.
Yeah, the website is USSLiberty.org. And it's got, information on the 34 fallen crew members. It's got information on some of us survivors. And there's the interview with Phil Turney and Candace Owens. I don't know if they've got the Jocko interview or not. But if not, yeah, there you go, USSLiberty.org. And just go to that page, and as you scroll down, there's areas that you can donate to the organization so that we can keep telling our story. We're all volunteers, and it's a 501c3 organization, so it's tax deductible if you're going to make a donation.
And you guys got a Facebook page.
Yep. Yeah, there's a Facebook page. We've got USS LVA, Liberty Veterans Association.org. And that too has, areas for donating and to give you more information about who we are and what we're trying to do. So I would certainly encourage you to, take a look at it. And if you have any comments, you can make comments on the page, and one of us will respond. I respond to, a lot of the comments that come across the Facebook page. I'm not on X. I'm not on, I don't know, any of the TikTok or any of the others.
Yeah, you should avoid it. It's a cesspool.
Yeah. So, but I'll do whatever I can to get the word out.
All right. Well, we'll keep going. Yeah, and watch Sacrificing Liberty. Read the books. Just learn about what happened, because, again, I think this is one of the most important things that has happened in the last 60 years. So, all right, Larry, I really appreciate your time. You're welcome back anytime. If there's anything that you ever just want to talk about, I mean, you got an open invite.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate that. I thank you again for having me, giving me a chance to get the word out. And if any of your listeners want to chat with me or whatever, put them in touch with me.
Oh, I will do. Absolutely.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good night now.
Night. Good night. All right. That was a heavy one. And Larry, you're backstage now. If you just X out of it, you'll be, there you go. Okay. All right, guys. That was intense. Sorry I wasn't too interactive with the chat tonight. I wanted to just make sure that I gave Larry my full attention. Let's see. There's a few guys in here tonight. So Blue Two, nice to see you. John, I saw you text me, but I purposely left my phone off. I saw them come through on my watch, but hopefully I asked everything you wanted me to ask. 402 CJH6, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Eric, you're the man. I'll be talking to you after this episode, I'm sure. Danger, I didn't see you tonight. Hopefully you get a chance to watch this on the replay. Oh no, there you are. Nice to see you, Danger. All right. I think that is all I got for tonight. That was a longer one. There's an insane amount of stuff going on. I was going to do an episode tonight, but my back has been messed up and this chair just makes it worse. So I actually have a full episode prepared. I probably won't be able to get to it till Wednesday though. I got a full week of stuff I have to do on my real job. So if you made it this far, please like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. You can subscribe to my channel over on X. I don't do any subscriber only content. That would just be to support the show. So, all right. That is all I got for tonight, you guys. But before we get out of here, you know how we do it. We got to tell a joke from the greatest book ever written, The Truth About Chuck Norris. This is the sequel. Chuck Norris cannot be stopped. You know the rules. I open the book. My eyes go to a joke. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not. Chuck Norris, joke of the evening. Chuck Norris once played Duck, Duck, Goose with a group of kindergartners. Only one kid made it to first grade. And on that note, stay Cali based.